So the Maria Valtorta debate about her writings has really erupted again in 2025. If we remember a few weeks ago, Cardinal Fernandez, his office released a note about Maria Valtorta's writings, saying that they could not be considered of supernatural origin. And later on, you will see that I published Father Joseph Iannuzzi's video saying, look, they are definitely divinely inspired, but could have errors, etc., etc. And before I kind of elaborate what this particular video is about, I just wanted to kind of recap something or fill you in on something as regards what Father Iannuzzi said. I mean, there are certain mystics out there that have a mystical experience and then write about their experience. For example, if you look at the life of Saint Teresa of Avila, she is having these soul experiences of as she progresses towards union of God, and she writes about them. Or St. John of the Cross, you have his poetry where he's writing about his experience. And when you look at other authors that you could compare Maria Valtorta to, you have Maria Agreda, the Mystical City of God, and you have Anne Catherine Emmerich. Those two mystics, Maria Agreda and Anne Catherine Emmerich, cannot be really compared to Maria Valtorta, because Maria Agreda destroys all her work. Like if you experience something, right, and you write it down when you have it fresh in your memory, say if you're in battle and you're there in the trenches and you describe what you're seeing, what you're experiencing and all so forth, as it happens, which some people have done, compared to somebody who writes about it 10 years later. You know, you're filtering your experience through your memory, which, you know, as time progresses, you remember things differently. With Maria Agreda, she writes everything down, she destroys it, and then she writes it again. And that, even that work, there has been debates about it. At a certain time it was put on the prohibited books list, and then it was taken off, etc., etc. With Anne Catherine Emmerich, we have nothing of her own writing. She wrote nothing. It was all through Brentano, that, you know, filtered through as Brentano, that we have this work. And if you look at Brentano's life after his death, you know, and you look at his library, I mean, the guy had access to a lot of different apocryphal scripture and so forth. So there are errors in those two writings, which Father Iannuzzi is right to point out. But with Maria Valtorta has the support of the Servite Fathers, I Servi di Maria, Father Migliorini, Father Berti, and so on, as she progresses from 1943 onwards. Okay, so she writes her biography. She's encouraged to write her biography in 1943, which she does very, very, very quickly. And then on the 23rd of April 1943, she begins that 10-year journey of writing the works that she wrote. And she writes them as she's experienced them mystically. Okay, so she has a line of pens beside her bed. You know, a line of pens. She has a notebook ready, and as she experiences these visions and dictations, she writes them down. So she's not writing them after the fact. She's not, this isn't, oh, I've experienced them and then I need to, you know, write them after the fact. She is writing them as they happen to her. And she has a priest who's taking all of these notebooks, typing them up for her, and giving them back to her. So it's not like she was working outside the church structures when she was doing all of this, you know. I just need to put this in context, but of course there could be errors in her writing. Private revelation is never infallible. And she herself says sometimes when she's describing something, she will say, well, I'm not an expert in this. I don't know about architecture. I'm not an expert in the temple structures and all this, but this is what I see and this is what I write. And she says this. So you have this unique mystic who is writing what she's seeing and hearing in real time. Now, this could be dismissed as some fictional romantic novel of our Lord Jesus Christ if it weren't for the fact that so many experts, biblical experts, experts who are on the process of being canonized saints or who have been canonized saints, read and recommended her and studied her and found that the finger of God is in her writings. There's no doubt about it. The finger of God is in Maria Valtorta's writings. If you look at the Jean-Francois Laverde, the Valtorta enigma, you know, he speaks about these thousands of facts scattered across her writings, which she simply could not have known or invented or put together from a bed. A woman suffering from 10 different sicknesses and ailments, bedridden, paralyzed, from 1943 to 1950 something. You know, all of this that she just couldn't have invented this. This woman had no doctorates. One thing that Father Iannuzzi said, that she wasn't, you know, she was simply educated. That's not really correct. Maria Valtorta's education in the early 1900s would have been up there at the top 20 percentile of Catholics. Okay, because if you look in Italy at that time, you know, 50% of people were illiterate, and even higher if you were born in the south of Italy. The north of Italy, being more industrialized, had a higher education. And she was an only child. She didn't come from a poor family. Her father was a military man. Her mother was a teacher. And Maria Valtorta was fluent in French and in Italian. So much so, if you read the writings, the letters that she wrote to this Carmelite mother, Madre Teresa Maria, and you look at the first volume, she translates into Italian a poem that St. Teresa of Lisieux wrote, La Rosa Sfogliata. So she's translating a French poem into Italian and trying to giving it a poetic sense in Italian. You have the poem here. Like, that's not a small feat. Somebody who is poorly educated doesn't manage to do this. No, Maria Valtorta has a very, very good grasp of Italian. You know, she's well capable of really describing what she's seeing. So much so that even to translate her Italian into English is not easy. You look at some sentences, like if you go to chapter 170 of the poem of the man God, or the gospel as revealed to me, go into that chapter. Well, it's the current edition, 170, and she's describing what she's seeing, and she says l'aria terza. And you know, in English it's translated, the air is clear. It's not really clear, because clear means one thing in English, and terza doesn't mean just clear. It means a quality of transparency of after a storm or something like this, that she is seeing something. What she's seeing, she's trying to explain what she is seeing. She's trying to elaborate what she is seeing, so that you can actually understand. Look, I'm seeing this. Why am I saying all of this? Because a few days ago, the Italian Bishops' Conference TV channel, which has a yearly budget of about 50 million euros, right? So the Italian Bishops' Conference, multi-million-dollar TV channel, TV 2000, it did a program on Maria Valtorta, which was really poo-pooing her down. It showed bad editing, it showed bad programming, and it showed an incredible lack of journalism, production. And is this systematic of what we get from Catholic bishops? Like, if you're going to do a program on Maria Valtorta, there's two foundations in Italy. The Maria Valtorta Foundation and the Erede Maria Valtorta Foundation, which is the foundation that comes from the Pisani publisher. And you have Don Ernesto Zucchini's foundation. So you have two foundations, you have two groups initially promoting Maria Valtorta's writings, encouraged by the church in many instances, with, for example, a letter from Pope Francis last year to Ernesto Zucchini. So you have two foundations. And the Italian Bishops' Conference TV channel goes and does a program on Maria Valtorta and doesn't bother, for example, allowing anybody from these two foundations to, explain why they think Maria Valtorta's letters, writings, are divinely inspired. There is a book pro e contra Maria Valtorta which you could have brought into this program. You have all the scientific data in Maria Valtorta's writings. Because the miracle for Maria Valtorta, when you examine Maria Valtorta's life, the miracle will be in her writings. When you examine, for example, Luisa Picaresca's life, the miracle that you would look for to prove that what she's experiencing is true is her life. Luisa Picaresca supposedly lived off the Eucharist for many years. I mean, that's not to be taken lightly. There's no doubt about it. If you look at Luisa Picaresca's life, you would have to, you would question, how could this woman have lived that way? You just can't discount. I know some people do, but we can't discount Luisa Picaresca's life. But with Maria Valtorta, her miracle is in her writings, which in the 1960s nobody picked up on. Nobody. Oh, it's a romanticized life, and she's very flowerful in her descriptions, and she's describing Jesus walking here, and she's describing this and that, and so forth. And then all of a sudden people say, hey, hold on a second. We can verify these descriptions. I mean, if you look at the books that are being published in Italian at the moment. So you have, for example, this is the first volume, Polifonia Valtortiana, which is all the people that are mentioned in Maria Valtorta's writings. And this is volume 1, just listing out the people mentioned by Maria Valtorta in the Gospel as Revealed to Me. That 5,000 page, 10 volume series of books that from 43 to early 50s that has been published, over 700 chapters talking about the Gospel as Revealed to Me, the life of Christ. Okay, so this is a monumental task. Now, if she invented it, if she had just a brilliant memory, some people have this photocopy memory, this incredible intuitive memory, this genius that they're able to write things out. Now, if she had that, she would be the number one genius that the world has ever seen. Because not even the greatest writers that the world has seen could just write without corrections and write a work that knits together seamlessly. Because characters appear at different points in the writings, and then they reappear, several volumes later. It's the places that Christ went to, the in-depth, in-detail understanding of geography of Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, that are today, those countries today, Egypt. The understanding of religious custom, of Jewish law, of Jewish custom, how Jews lived, the understanding of Jerusalem, the temple, etc., etc., the understanding of how Jews dressed, what they ate, their diets, how they cooked, how they lived, their house structures, their gardens, etc., etc. I mean, there's a million details in there. People can discount the details as fluffy things, or they can actually see them for what they are. As I said, I do encourage people to kind of read Maria Valtorta's writings, study them seriously. And if you're going to do a program like this, like the Italian Bishops' Conference TV channel does, and you totally discount people that have spent decades studying her, in like Don Ernesto Zucchini or some of these experts, you discount them. You're committing, you're committing dishonest journalism, to be honest. Yeah, we want to publish this program and we've scripted it out. Now, we're not going to introduce any of these other arguments in there. We want to give this to our viewership. I mean, in Italy today, there are only 7 million Catholics left who go to Mass on a Sunday regularly, who regularly practice the faith. And you might have another 7 million that will pop in every once in a while when they feel like going to a service or maybe a Christmas or something like this. So the mighty Italian Catholic Church now has been reduced to 7 million practicing Catholics. So you have less practicing Catholics in Italy now than you have in Uganda or in Poland. You have more practicing Catholics now left in Poland than you have in the once mighty Italian Church. And, you know, let's face it, guys, when these private revelations, as the Catechism says, come in a time when the church is weak, when the faith is weak. We have never had such crazy exegesis, biblical exegesis, as we've had in the last 100 years. Never in the history of the Catholic Church. You will have priests coming up and say, well, the miracles, he didn't really rise from the dead. That's just what they thought they experienced. He didn't really multiply the bread and the fishes. People just shared. Christ got people to share. The miracles, well, you can take them with a pinch of salt. The Gospels were written a few decades afterwards when, you know, people exaggerated these events. You know, the miracles, people thought they might have been healed, but it was just all psychological. I mean, seriously, I'm not kidding you. This is what people come up, the nonsense that they come up with. And, you know, it's come to a fore now, you know, exactly in this moment in the church, that the very teachings of our Lord Jesus Christ, the fundamental teachings on marriage and sexuality, have been called into question. There has been no time in the Catholic Church when the most fundamental apostolic teachings of the Catholic Church have been called into question. You know, and this is the bonker situation. And so when the church is that weak, what do you have? You have the finger of God through Maria Valtorta calling us back to conversion, showing us how Christ ministered and taught and so forth. And, you know, the miracle of Maria Valtorta's writings really are the scientific facts. The science is very hard to refute in Maria Valtorta's writings. She could not have known about, she's writing about places that were only rediscovered after she died. You know, it's just a mammoth amount of information that this woman just couldn't have had access to. So, look, I want to inspire people to read Maria Valtorta's and understand why Maria Valtorta's writings was given to the church at this time, because at this time in the church, you have never seen that amount of confusion. We have never seen the amount of doctrinal confusion in the church as we've seen at this moment in time. Never in the history of the church. I mean, there's been confusion in the past and weaknesses in the past, but human nature really hasn't changed over the 2,000 years. You know, I know we might have progressed and we might understand ourselves better, but human nature as such, our nature, our fallen human nature, hasn't really changed over 2,000 years. The passions and the weaknesses that humanity faced in Israel 2,000 years ago, you know, are pretty much the same as what we have today. You know, we're pulled by the same temptation as we were pulled 2,000 years ago. We fall into the same sin as they fell in 2,000 years ago. Humanity hasn't suddenly evolved into this new human reality. You know, we're still the same idiots as we were 2,000 years ago. And so we need the gospel today more than ever. And it's during this weakness in the church, because there's no doubt about it, guys, you need to understand this. Your leadership in the church has failed you. The successors of the apostles in the Catholic Church have become papal secretaries. So I'm the secretary to the Pope. So and bishops know this. They struggle with, okay, well, I'm being called to implement this program in my diocese. I don't know what Rome is thinking, but I don't think people will want it. But it's a box ticking exercise. You know, bishops are made doing box ticking exercises. Well, no, come on, be fraternal with your bishops in the bishops' conference and work together as a team. Yada yada yada. The Catholic faithful are looking on and saying, what happened to our successors of the apostles? Well, what happened to the successors of the apostles? They now bow down to this grouping of synodal grouping up here, you know, of lay people, of people that Pope Francis picked to discuss things. Now the successors of the apostles go through this synodal grouping and have to implement that. That's why you see this 17 points nonsense, guys, call it out for what it is. This being discussed in Irish synodal meetings. And you have Irish priests with their hands folded at this meeting saying, what is going on? People want to know about Christ, the Christ that rose from the dead, the Christ that is living in the church today. They want to know, explain to me, what is this faith experience? Explain the Christ you know in prayer. Teach us Christ. How can we know him better? And in the writings of Maria Valtorta, you will find the living Christ described, a Christ you can touch, see, hear. Certainly, it's sad in the English-speaking world that we have two translations which, okay, they're good, but they fully don't capture what Maria Valtorta was writing in Italian. There's errors, it's poorly translated in certain areas. And I suppose, you know, when you don't have millions of euros to do a good translation, you rely on who you can. But, you know, I hope that when a good English translation comes out, it will help the English-speaking world understand what Maria Valtorta was trying to do. Now, I don't want to put you off buying the books, because the translation, while it could be done better, it's not a bad translation. But I would love to see in a future edition of Maria Valtorta's writings more footnotes, more elaboration of certain descriptions that she's trying to do, you know, so that people can understand how serious this work is. She didn't just write it on her own. She had a group she had bishops and priests there reading her writings. Like, you have some of the greatest biblical scholars, great biblical scholars, cardinals recommended that her writings be published. Bishops, priests, saints, St. Teresa of Calcutta, Mother Teresa, she read her works all through her life. You had, expert biblical scholars. I mean, this is the sad reality of that TV program. And I think it's really showing itself up how badly edited you can do a TV program on something, with so much money, how badly edited that it shows, the lack of, investigation. It also shows, after 30 years, the dicastery, the Doctrine of the Faith, how badly they've investigated her writings. I wonder, this last attack on Maria Valtorta, is this the dying days of the modernism in the church? I would ask the question, because I think if you read Maria Valtorta's writings, you will see, Christ didn't come to leave a synodal church. Christ didn't come to create a synodal church, to discuss things in the Spirit that go directly contrary to his teachings, completely contrary to what he left his church. We need to be inclusive and welcoming. No, we need to preach the gospel. Give Christ's teachings to the world, which are unpopular. That's what the mission of the church is to disciple people to union with God. And in order to disciple people, to introduce people into the mysteries that Christ is trying to give us, it requires a change of life on our part. It requires us to live in a different way, which is not easy sometimes. You need to practice this. And yet, for so many, sadly, the church today is just, it's moribund. It's completely lost its sense of mission. The successors of the apostles, our bishops, have become papal secretaries. We no longer have successors of the apostles. People need to understand this. They're not able to speak their mind, question openly, guys, what is going on here? You have very, very, very few bishops that will stand up. Some who are retired, and all of a sudden the Vatican can't do much with them. But the successors of the apostles are asleep at the wheel. And it's during this confusion that you look at some of this private revelation. You say, hold on a second, you cannot discount Maria Valtorta's writings. You simply can't. But and give this message in good faith so that people can understand, when there's weakness in the church, this is when God intervenes directly. To inspire people, to wake them up. The real Christ challenged his followers. And all the time when you're reading through it, all the time the disciples and the apostles were saying, well, Christ, don't do this, don't go there, you're going to be persecuted. The Pharisees and the Sadducees will be after if you go here, and don't do this. And, even St. Peter in the gospel, you say, Lord, Christ says to him, get behind me, Satan. Because there's always this tension between the human way of thinking and the divine way of thinking. And Christ wants us to change our minds to think like him, which is counter to our nature sometimes. We're so tied to this world, we forget how Christ is trying to change us to think of the next world. We're so attached to so many things in this world. And this synodal process, this synodal church, is so tied to this world, it's forgetting the mission of the church. It's completely bypassing the mission of the church. It's becoming a badly run sports entity that doesn't win games. Really. That is so inclusive that the majority of the people don't understand, well, what is this process about? Hold on a second. I thought the mission of the church was this. Well, you've introduced a process. You've gone out to question people about what they think we should be discussing in the church, who haven't understood the gospel, who haven't been. I'd love somebody to challenge me on this, but I'd love somebody to do an in-depth study on the writings of Maria Valtorta, not just the big work, the Gospel is revealed to me, or the poem on the man God. All of her writings. How many of those who criticize Maria Valtorta have not read her writings, her original writings, end to end? The various books, her commentaries on the Sunday Mass, her commentary on the letters to the Romans, her autobiography, her notebooks, her little notebooks, etc., etc. This woman is unique when it comes to Catholic mysticism, and I've never seen such a mystic. So, it's bizarre. It's really bizarre. I've never seen a Catholic mystic so debated in the church. I wonder, has this something to do with Medjugorje at the end, because she is so heavily promoted in Medjugorje that, are they worried? I don't know, but we'll see. Anyway, this video went on a little bit longer than I thought, but I just really, really encourage Catholics, please study the writings of Maria Valtorta, but study the scientific studies around Maria Valtorta. That would blow your mind. That will say, wow, God, how could she have written this? And it will drive you to ask, okay, well, what is Christ trying to do in her writings? What is God trying to do through Maria Valtorta at this moment in the church? You're held up the deposit of the faith, and you're held up a synodal process, which is another church. It's another church. They're building another church. Christ didn't leave a synodal church structure. He left an apostolic church. He charged the deposit of the faith to his apostles and their successors, and they are asleep. They are asleep. God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.